Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We have a great guest for you today in an analytics episode, and this is some really interesting stuff. We have Timo Riska from PFF joining us to talk about the possible outcomes when a quarterback drops back. I don't think we always think about all the outcomes. We think pass or maybe an incomplete, usually some. Well, there's really more than that, and I want Timo to explain it. But Timo, first of all, how are you doing today?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. Always happy to talk about football. I'm feeling good.
All right, outstanding. And I'll let you handle your own Twitter handle.
Yeah, so many people might already know me, others might not. So I'm PFF_Mo on Twitter. So M-O-O. Some people pronounce it PFF_Mo. So as you wish.
Okay, so if we're Americans and we want to remember it, it looks like the sound a cow makes. And
Right.
that's not the way Timo intended it originally, but that's okay. But let's get on to this topic because this is great and it really, dovetails with the analysis of Lamar Jackson very well. But I want to bring up your first graph here and tell us about it.
Yeah, so basically what we are looking at here, we are not necessarily looking at the final result of a pass play. So how many yards did it gain, or did it gain a first down or stuff like this? So we're basically looking at the initial quarterback decision or initial quarterback outcome. So basically, like a quarterback drops back to pass, and obviously the goal of a pass play is usually to pass. So basically to throw it to a receiver, obviously. And this is basically represented by the queen part of this graph here. And as we can see here, this is basically league average, the NFL logo. So this happens like 82% of the time. So 82% of the time when a quarterback drops back to pass, he also just targets a receiver in the sense that he actually targets a receiver. He has an intended target, tries to complete it to him, and then it works or not. But that's basically the most basic outcome of a dropback. But then of course, other stuff can also happen. So basically, the other outcomes are scrambles, which are of course with more mobile quarterbacks entering the NFL in the last 10 or 15 years. This is of course happening more often. Then of course there are throwaways, which the NFL charts as incompletions. So if you just look at the usual box score, like there's no difference being made between throwaways and targets. But of course it's not the same. Like throwaways were never intended to be completions. It's just the quarterback trying not to get sacked.
I think there are various degrees of white to gray to black in terms of what a throwaway is. Obviously, if you throw it into the fifth row of the stands, it's usually a throwaway. But how does PFF define it? How do you guys chart it?
I'm actually not 100% sure. But obviously the obvious example of a throwaway is when it's thrown out of bounds. Of course, there's also like when it's close, there's already always some kind of subjectivity involved. Like when it lands, I don't know, 2 yards out of bounds, did he actually target the receiver or was he just inaccurate or was he throwing it away? Or when a quarterback throws it across the end zone, so did he just miss it high or was he actually throwing it away? That's of course something that's not always completely objective, but I guess our game charters try to be as consistent as possible.
Okay,
I think most throwaways in the NFL are fairly obvious when they happen, I think.
Okay. I with my background in charting, I would agree that usually there's a few that'll be in the middle, but it's usually your barbelled outcomes that anybody would agree on. I'm seeing Aaron Rodgers with about 7% of throwaways. What's the entire range of that? If I go down to other quarterbacks, anybody higher than that?
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is an interesting quarterback when it comes to throwaways. So where are the Packers here? So
they're in the
here Packers. Packers 7%. Kirk Cousins 7%. That's the largest. I mean, Jets also like Joe Flacco. I mean, this is after week 4. So yeah, this is basically 3 games of Joe Flacco and 1 game of Zach Wilson. So yeah, consider that should be basically Joe Flacco here. Yeah, so 7% is like the highest rates of throwaways, and Rodgers historically always had a high number of throwaways. So I mean, obviously there's a lot of talk in Green Bay about Rodgers not really trusting his receivers, stuff like this, and this has been the case for like a few years now, especially now that Devonta Adams is gone. So yeah, it's interesting that maybe that's a factor there. Obviously, he also just doesn't want to get sacked, I guess. But yeah, it's an interesting fact about Aaron Rodgers that he's pretty high in throwaway rate across his career, at least his later career, I would say. Which brings me to a point here. But one of the reasons I'm looking at that, and instead of looking at like the play result, I mean, of course, looking at the play result, like how many yards did play gain is also necessary and interesting. But one reason why this is actually interesting is all of this is fairly stable for quarterbacks. So like this is not like from year to year, it's fairly stable. Like Brady will always be at the top here. Like maybe he's only top 5 at some point, but Brady will usually always be at the top when it comes to how often does he target the player. He just wants to get rid of the ball, and he wants to execute the play, and he wants to give a receiver a chance to make a play. That's like how Brady always has played for 20 years now, and he will probably kind of always play like that for however he will, how long he will play in this league.
This is a question I have that directly relates to that. So have you looked at this versus time to throw numbers that AWS and other people provide that might tell you that the quarterbacks who have take longer to get rid of the ball tend to have lower target percentages, or maybe you'd have to define it even somehow differently, but it seems to me that would be a natural consequence.
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's true. So quarterbacks who tend to hold, like how long a quarterback holds the ball is also a thing which is usually fairly stable for quarterbacks. So it's just like a conscious decision. Like other than completing a pass, like completing a pass is something which of course depends on how well did you throw it, did your receiver catch it. But yeah, whether you throw it away or whether you take off for a scramble or whether you try to target someone is kind of a conscious decision by the quarterback, and that's why it's fairly stable year over year. And the same is true for holding the ball, and it's in fact true that players with high sack rates, high scramble rates, are those who tend to hold the ball a little bit longer. Like obviously, the players with high scramble rates are usually the players who are pretty mobile, so they know, okay, I can make something happen even when the play breaks down. So this, of course, incentivizes them to hold the ball a little bit longer because they think, okay, I can hold the ball longer, and then I can still make something happen by leaving the pocket or something like this. So that's definitely true. So yeah, a player like Tom Brady who gets rid of the ball pretty fast will always be at the top here in terms of how often does he target a receiver.
All right, how about we change this a little bit and give maybe a little bit of a scouting report on Lamar Jackson, or a report on Lamar Jackson relative to the rest of the league, and how you would interpret his results.
Yeah, so Lamar is he's right here. So he's a little bit below average in terms of targeting a receiver, which is, I think, like not a bad thing for him. Like obviously he doesn't. I don't think like the Ravens, obviously they don't have the best receiving room overall, I guess. And then obviously he scrambles a lot, so which makes a lot of sense for him. I guess I think he has. I mean, yeah, obviously, there's Justin Fields, there's Daniel Jones, and then Jalen Hurts who scramble even at even higher rates. But obviously, Lamar Jackson still scrambles a lot. But this number has actually gone down. So in 2018, like his first start, 2018, like he was closer to these numbers here, like 15, 20%. So he's definitely trying to play in structure much more now than he did as a young player, which just I think shows some kind of development, which is always good. But and of course, like in generally, like the targeting a receiver is like the most valuable play.
But not for
but
Lamar.
Of course but of course for a player like Lamar, a scramble is also really, really valuable. Like which might not be the case like for other quarterbacks, but yeah, of course for Lamar, like this blue part of his distribution is like basically just as valuable or even more valuable than the green part. So that's good for him.
So about 8.1 yards per scramble this year for Lamar, and I don't know his number per pass, but it's less than that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like if the quarterback passes for 8.1 yards, then that's pretty good. Like that's top 5 or something like that.
Yeah. All right. So now one other thing that I've looked at occasionally is to combine the sacks and the scrambles. And a player like Lamar Jackson, there's another kind of a much more gradual black to white with a lot of gray conversion of those, meaning there are a lot of the sacks he takes are really short negative run plays where he's decided to turn a pass into a run, and some still get strapped a yard or two behind the line of scrimmage. We see that in terms of lower sack yardage values for Lamar. Rarely caught 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, or 20 is too far, but 10. Rarely caught 10. And he's actually got a net positive when you combine those two, the scrambles and the sacks, of about 3.8 yards per play.
Yeah, that's like, I think like if you have a high scramble rate like Lamar does, like what you don't want to have is that your sack rate also goes up, right? And like this is like right now, this is kind of happening. So this is something which is happening for Russell Wilson, and which also happened for Russell Wilson in Seattle, I think, for example. His sack rate is higher than his scramble rate, which is not what you want from a mobile quarterback. Or like obviously this is what's happening with Justin Fields, right? Like he has this huge scramble rate, but it also comes with a huge sack rate, and then this is not really valuable. But for Lamar, he has this huge scramble rate, but he does it without taking a lot of sacks. Like 5% is like fewer sacks than the league average. So that's really good, really valuable.
He's taking shorter sacks too, is the other point. And by the way, if you look back at NFL history, and I'm sure Timo knows this, but I'm really just talking to the listeners out there, the mobile quarterbacks have traditionally had the highest sack rates. And if you go back to Randall Cunningham, I think it's one of his first years, 85, 86, 84, somewhere in there, he was sacked over 25% of dropbacks. It's still incredible to me that could happen in actual NFL play. But we see Justin Fields at 15% this year.
Right. Yeah, this is like, I don't know, this is like a little bit, like it's not really intuitive for when you first hear about it, that mobile quarterbacks have the highest sack rates, because like when a rusher comes at Tom Brady, or when a rusher comes at Lamar Jackson, like Lamar Jackson is much more likely to evade the rusher. Mm-hmm. And Tom Brady will probably not evade the rusher. But like a player like Tom Brady who can't evade the rusher will make sure that the rusher cannot even get to him because he gets rid of the ball before. That's why mobile quarterbacks who trust their feet, rightfully so, often or have higher sack rates.
So I'm looking across at the Lamar numbers, and I know the Ravens fans will have a big interest in this. We see the targets are basically at the league average, 1 point below, which is on a number that large is fine. Scrambles
also, like the sample is not huge at this point. Like obviously 1% is like it's like one more target instead of like if you would take one throw away and would make it a target, you would already be at 82% here.
All right, and then the 9% scramble rate we've already been over before, substantially higher than league average, and that's actually the best group in terms of productivity on this entire chart, on this entire line. Is those 9% scrambles are better than the passes, and they're obviously better than the sacks, the throwaways, or the interceptions? The last category. What's the last category?
Yeah, the last category is just something
batted pass,
which happens in our it's basically a batted pass, or like we don't chart like target is really when we chart a target receiver and we chart a pass depth. So and for batted passes we can't chart pass depth because like we don't know how far the ball would have been passed if it wasn't batted, and we also don't really have a target receiver. So that's why I made this another category. And broken incompletion is basically it's just like, I don't know, like imagine a quarterback is under pressure, tries to throw it, but the ball slips out of his hands. It's ruled a forward pass, but it wasn't really a targeted pass, but it's a forward pass. It's an incompletion. And yeah, that's like just like the last category. Like it's something that offenses don't want to have, I guess.
Sure.
But like it happens like 3% of the time, league average.
I was trying to decide if it was the worst category on here or not relative to the sacks. The sacks might be worse, but Lamar Jackson just threw an interception right off the helmet of a player this last week that I'm guessing would be in the far category to the right.
So the category to the right like are mostly incompletions. Like they mostly fall incomplete. Very, very rarely are they interceptions. But like I think on average the sacks are a little bit worse. Like the sacks obviously always generate negative yardage, and those wet parts mostly just fall incomplete.
Let's do a comparison here of Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Obviously a divisional rival, and these guys will be playing against each other for a long time. It looks like, at least we hope so, if Lamar can get signed, right? We see a much higher sack rate there for Burrow at 9%.
Right.
Even with all the changes, they're still having a lot of trouble protecting him.
Yeah, it seems like this was like there are two things in play here. When I thought about Burrow last year and his sack rate was like on the one hand, obviously the offensive line of the Bengals was just not good last year, and obviously it was his first year starting, and generally quarterbacks get like not dramatically better, but a little bit better over time. Like young quarterbacks, in terms of avoiding sacks. So young quarterbacks usually take a little bit more sacks than veterans on average. So basically you would expect Burrow to get a little bit better in this regard. And obviously they also upgraded the offensive line a little bit, at least on paper. And I kind of expected him not to take as many sacks anymore. And obviously, the first two games, like he took sack after sack after sack. So it was crazy to see. Burrow didn't take as many sacks in the last two games. So I think the Miami game he took only one sack. I think he took two sacks in the Jets game, week 3. So we'll see how this evolves. But right now he's still taking a lot of sacks. Which is interesting because obviously he has like 3 really good receivers. Right now it's not really clicking for them, so he can't really get rid of the ball quickly. And I think one thing which is interesting for Burrow. So let me go to another chart here. So this is all plays, but I have done the same thing for pressure so basically the same chart, but I'm only looking at plays where the quarterback's under pressure, and this is really where Burrow is taking where he is still at the bottom of the league at taking sacks. Like the average is, of course, the league average is much higher. 80% of all pressured plays turn into sacks this year. But Burrow is way above. So once pressure arrives, he doesn't really find the solutions to still get rid of the ball. Obviously, he's not as mobile as Lamar Jackson, so he maybe cannot escape as well. But he's not really finding the solutions to still get rid of the ball.
So I think that's the key factor is he only gets the ball off about 80% as much as an average NFL quarterback. 48 out of 59. I'm using 48 out of 60 is 80%.
If under
that's
pressure.
A big reduction. Yeah. All right. That's probably one of the biggest issues of the Bengals passing offense right now, that they can't really figure this out, whether this is just like Burrow's fault. Of course, the offensive line is also a little bit of fault, and the scheme. You cannot really like perfectly disentangle whose fault this is, but it's definitely an issue for them. Let me go a little bit of a sidebar here, because this is something that I preach about a little bit when I talk about defense, is that defense requires variation of play result in order to make defensive stops. And if you think about it, the extreme example, if the offense got an average gain on every single play, they'd march right down the field and they'd score a touchdown every single offensive drive. But what they need some combination of penalties, sacks, turnovers, etc., to stop the opponent. What this is telling me that the Bengals offense is probably significantly less efficient with their high sack rates, despite having very good receivers, because of that risk of having drive stalling sacks come up. But you really see it in this kind of graph.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, sacks can be a huge reason why like when you watch a game like a Bengals game and you think, okay, man, this offense has a huge potential. Like they are making this throws down the sideline to Jamar Chase, to T Higgins, and it looks really good, right? And really explosive. But then all of a sudden, they're taking sacks, and then a 2nd and 16, stuff like this. And then of course, like it gets like, it gets complicated. Like you cannot. It's very hard to overcome sacks on a drive. So that's definitely true. This is like one reason why where the Bengals offense, and this is the same thing we saw last year. So they were like, when you just looked at like yards per attempt, I think Burrow had the highest yards per attempt of all quarterbacks last year. So like just in terms of how many yards did they move the ball when they dropped back to pass, they were one of the best passing offenses in the league. But when you looked at how often do the Bengals get a new first down, they were actually, so basically they're for 1st and 10.
Sure.
And of course the goal is to get to another 1st and 10. Right, whether that happens on 1st, 2nd,
understood.
3rd down.
It's offensive efficiency. My fans will know this.
Right.
Who listen to the show.
Moving the stakes, and in terms of how often do they move the stakes, they were actually league average, and this is basically the reason that they're. So when they move the ball, it looks really good, and they're moving it in explosive ways via big plays. But often they can't move it because they took too many sacks. And then it's hard to get explosive plays if you're like in the 2nd and 15. The defense, it's much easier for the defense to defend the deep ball compared to favorable down the distance for the offense.
Yeah. All right. Barbelled results there for the Bengals. Okay. Well, something to look forward to. Definitely something that says the Ravens are going to need to get pressure on Joe Burrow this Sunday to win.
Yeah, definitely. That's what they have to do on Sunday.
Anything else to show us here that relates to the multiple charts you brought?
You
had pressure. What are the other charts you had besides pressure and all plays?
So so there's also like basically a little bit related to pressure, but of course not the same as against the blitz.
Mm-hmm.
Which is of course which doesn't always result in a pressure, but it definitely forces the quarterback to make a quicker decision. And like, I mean, it's not really related to the Ravens, but like this is really interesting how far away from the league. Like, I mean, the range, like when it comes with like when the opponent blitzes, the best teams are getting rid of the ball like 94% of the time, and then it ranges to like 70%. Yeah, and then suddenly there's a 20% gap to the Giants and Bears, Daniel Jones and Justin Fields. So like just by blitzing them, you can basically make sure that they are not getting off. They're not getting a targeted pass off like half of the time,
right?
Which is crazy. Like, that's not how you. I don't know. I don't think you can build an efficient offense like this.
Can we look at Lamar under the blitz here? Because I think he's been better this year, and I'm also noticing that Burrow doesn't really look that bad.
It really does. Like 2% sack rate only. Like that's not much. Not a high throwaway rate. Yeah, I think
good
that's
scramble
really
rate. Yeah.
Like if you add scrambles plus targets, like 94%, like that's basically like the Packers. Chiefs are at 96 if you add both. Of course, that's a very good offense. Chargers are very good here, but it's basically only the Chargers and the Chiefs have a higher, let's say, positive play rate in the sense of either getting a target off or scrambling for positive yardage. So that's really good.
All right. Outstanding stuff, Timo. It's so cool the way you guys always are breaking down, an old idea maybe in a new way. And obviously the ability to do this has been around for a long time. People that had even not using that far right column or even not using throwaways, they could have broken it down in different ways. But the way you've done it here is very, very conducive to insight about the topic. Any other projects you're working on you want to tell us about? We're always excited to hear the next thing from you guys, but anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I mean, if anyone is interested in my work, I like just this week I published an article about offensive line evaluation, where basically like obviously we so I think PFF is basically best known for its grading, I guess. Like that's one thing everyone associates PFF with. Like we grade players on plays. And obviously, we also grade offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and I looked at pass rushing and pass blocking specifically, so passing game. And what I did is I tried to like adjust the grades for assignment, because like the grades basically, because it has to work like this, like when a pass blocker gets beat, that's a negative grade, right? Mm-hmm. But the person who gives this grade, like he can't decide whether this was a good or a bad pass rusher, right? Like that's because that's completely subjective in the moment he watches the film. So he just says, okay, this he got beat, that's a negative grade, right? He can't care for whether this was Aaron Donald or some backup pass rusher. Like he just says, okay, he got beat, that's a negative grade. But of course, it's a difference whether an offensive guard got beat by Aaron Donald or by a backup pass rusher. Like a lot of guards get beat by Aaron Donald, but against the backup pass rusher, you should have a higher weight of not losing your pass block.
I cannot tell you how many different conversations, but it's at least 3 that I've had with Neil Hornsby about exactly that topic. But the last time he was on the show, he talked a little bit about it in terms of, it's just too complicated for us to figure out the adjustment necessary to grade for individual offensive linemen based on the defensive line quality that they're facing or the pass rush quality they're facing. Yeah. But you guys, do you think this will be something that goes to the grading?
I hope so eventually. Eventually this would be the ideal thing, that eventually this could go into the public facing grading. But right now what I did, I adjusted for it, and the advantage is like since 2017, so it's 5 seasons of data now. We actually charting exactly who is blocking whom, and and this of course also means that we are charting whether it's a double team or whether there was help. So we know whether a guard blocked Aaron Donald 1-versus-1 or whether a guard or in the center took him on a double team. And of course, that's also a difference, right? Like if Aaron Donald beats a double team, that's much more impressive than if he beats one single guard.
But that's already included in the grading, right? I mean, he's more likely to get a plus 1.5 on the base level scoring if he beats a double than he is if he beats a single, right?
Yeah, the magnitude of the positive grade is already included, but the weight of getting a positive grade is of course not necessarily included. So basically, there are basically 2 things. On the one hand, there's just did you get a positive grade or not? Positive grade just means you beat the guy in front of you or the guys in front of you, and then there's a magnitude. So is it a plus 0.5? Is it a plus 1? Is it a plus 1.5? And this basically depends on how fast did he beat him? Mm-hmm. Did he finish it? Maybe did he also get to the quarterback, or is it a double team, which is of course more impressive. But of course, against against a single team, you will usually get a positive grade, and on average, 13-14% of the time, an average pass rusher. But of course, against a double team, that's only 8 or 7%.
So you normalize that if
basically what I did is I normalized for all these things. For how good how good are the players that face each other? Did they receive help? And then some other stuff like down the distance, because obviously on 3rd down, a pass rusher can just pin the ears back and rush the passer, and on 1st down he usually has a run fit. So pass rushing is easier on 3rd down or on long distance compared. Basically, the rule of thumb is 3rd down, and longer distances means pass rushers will get better grades because their job is only rushing the passer, and they don't have any one fits.
All right.
So basically I normalized for all this stuff, and then just weighted pass rushers and pass blockers. So you can see graphs in this article where, who's the best, stuff like this. And actually, I'm planning to do the same for run blocking, because we basically chart the same for run blocking. So I want to do similar stuff for run blocking, and then maybe within the next 2 weeks, I might publish another article on run blocking. And of course, in the future, the goal is definitely to have this public facing. So we have this data, and it would be great if our consumers could use it. And
All right. Outstanding. Timo, fantastic to get a chance to talk football with you today. I'm glad we could finally make this work. And I'll look forward to talking football with you in the future if you'd come join us again, particularly with this very interesting sounding new work on the offensive and defensive line. I think would just be terrific. Tell folks one more time, you're at PFF_MOO. We might call it Moo. Yeah. Somebody else might call it Mo. But really appreciate you coming on. Anything else you want to plug while you're here?
I don't think so. Okay. Good. I enjoyed the talk.
All right. Outstanding. Thanks for coming on. And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.